When I'm designing for power fantasy, my aim is for everything to look and feel as though it could exist. In this video, I'd like to share the artistic process and the influences that went into drawing these warriors known as Iron Demons. The designs are definitely not perfect, but I've paid as much attention to detail as I can with my current knowledge, through researching how armor was constructed and worn historically. Before I get into it, I'd like to mention the YouTube channels Scholar Gladiatoria and Modern History TV. Their videos showcasing and discussing historical weapons and armor have been invaluable for me. I'd also like to mention Todd's workshop. This was somehow my first time drawing a crossbow, so his videos going into their mechanics and usage were a massive help. The soldiers I'm drawing in this video are from Dao, a northern mountainous nation with a pastoral society and a strong metalworking industry. The time period they're from is around the 3600s, towards the end of the 500-year power fantasy timeline, and roughly equivalent in technology level to the 15th to 16th centuries of our own history. Their name, Iron Demons, comes not from within Dao itself, but from soldiers of Hanbei who fought against them, and refers to their heavy armor and ferocity in combat. Much of Dao's land is suitable only for livestock rearing, and as a result, animal products are more readily available than fabric and cord made from fiber crops. I've tried to reflect that in these designs, with elements such as leather straps and belts, and I imagine much of the fabric they're wearing to be woven from wool, keeping them warm in the cold northern climate. The most notable component of these designs is the prominent use of steel plate armor, owing to Dao's abundance of iron and its well-established refining and smithing industries. Blacksmiths from Dao are renowned far beyond its borders for both the quality and quantity of metal goods they produce, and their output plays an important role in the effectiveness of Dao's war machine. I wanted soldiers of Dao to leave a menacing yet professional impression, and felt that using black as the overall base tone for their designs would communicate this best. To show off the character's wealth and sense of individual style, I've also tried to give the design some flair, with color accents and design elements like pleats and thick sashes, especially in the case of the central figure. The darkening of the plate armor could be done in a number of ways, with varying levels of complexity and expense, but would most often be achieved through oil blackening, where pieces would be rubbed with oil and heated to form a protective coating. For especially cheap pieces, armor would come out black straight from the forge and be left as is, so the method would really depend on the time and budget available to the individual soldier. Although this kind of blackening would be common throughout the Central Plains, what sets the average soldiers of Dao apart visually is just how much of their form is covered with exposed, dark steel, giving them a distinct presence on the battlefield. If you find this approach to world building interesting, consider subscribing, and check out the other content I've made if you'd like more context on the broader power fantasy universe. Thanks, now back to the video. The central figure here is Shendai, a prominent and talented military leader, born to a lower noble family. Through his cunning strategizing and tactical prowess, he would rise to become an influential historical figure. To the right of him is an example of a heavy infantryman, whose armor and shield would allow him to break through the pikes of an opposing force. Due to his dangerous position at the front of a formation, he would be paid accordingly, and his equipment reflects that. The soldier on the left is a simple crossbowman, used to harass and weaken an enemy either on the open field or defending during a siege. For the crossbow design itself, I flirted with the idea of using a Chinese style of lock, but in the end I chose to go with the simpler European rolling nut design, and a goat's foot loading lever to facilitate a high poundage draw weight. Besides generally liking the look of European crossbows, around the time periods I'm taking reference from, I struggled to find much research material for East Asian designs, so I chose the less speculative, more evidence-based route, and drew a design close to what was used in reality. The use of European-style metal prods also ties into Dao's world building, as compared to the ubiquity of skilled blacksmiths. Bowyers skilled at working with wood and horn were rare, and there wasn't a prevalent culture of archery as there was in other nations. There's also the question of why he's using a crossbow instead of a firearm. Although firearms would eventually come to dominate the battlefield, at this stage, crossbows and bows were still relevant and powerful. They didn't enjoy the raw power and simple manufacturing of contemporary hand cannons, but they made up for it with rate of fire and reliability. Especially in the eyes of a nation like Dao, with the capability to produce them to a high standard, crossbows remained well suited to its needs for much of its history. Stylistically, in a similar way to many of my other designs for power fantasy, I've tried to blend European and East Asian culture from our own history in an interesting way. For these designs, the main Eastern influences are the long brigandine coats, the underlying clothing, and in general the decorative elements take a lot of their styling cues from Ming Dynasty Chinese armor. The plate elements are inspired by armor from Western Europe around a similar time, with a mix of components and styling from different regions. One challenge in particular I found with designing the plate armor was integrating the cuirasses with the thick layered belts and sashes I wanted, as Western plate armor often used very thin leather belts, so I had to get a bit speculative. I chose to add articulated lames where the breastplate meets the natural waist, which I hope would give enough range of motion and allow everything to sit comfortably in that area. Honestly, I spend a lot of time watching and rewatching videos of people suiting up and moving around in armor, just to try and understand how it was constructed and how the different components interact. Even now, I still feel like my knowledge is very surface level, but as my understanding improves, I'm excited to develop the armor in this setting further. The last design element I'd like to talk about is Chendai's golden mask, which was a gift from his younger brother, Kordai, who went missing in combat shortly after presenting it. I didn't go into this piece with a clear vision for the mask. I had a lot of interesting but very different styles of historical masks I wanted to take reference from, but in the end I didn't really go with any of them. Early on when I was sketching, I tried drawing a full face mask with more realistic features, similar to masks used by Roman cavalry in antiquity, but I couldn't get it to a place I liked. I decided instead to switch to a half mask, the intention being to allow him, since he is a leader, to both shout orders to his men and breathe more easily should he get into combat himself. As a result though, the design became much simpler than I'd initially hoped it would be, and although I do like how it came out, I feel like I can do more with this concept. In the near future, I intend to spend time developing cultural aspects of this setting further, and the patterns and artistic styles derived from them. Once I've done this, I should be able to be more intentional with my design choices, especially when it comes to decorative elements like embroidery, gilding, and etching that can really bring a design to life. With this in mind, I intend to revisit this mask and other parts of these designs in future, so that they can feel more closely linked to the culture they exist in. For the last section of this video, and to give some context for the world behind these designs, I'd like to talk about Dao itself and the strategic situation it finds itself in. The kingdom of Dao lies within the Xianzan Mountains, on the northwestern edge of the Central Plains. Though people had lived there for many centuries prior, the region rose to prominence following the fierce expansion of the Khan Empire during the 3200s. The first Khan Emperor, Ryugadai, sought a mutually beneficial agreement with the inhabitants of the rugged land in order to access their rich ore deposits. The period following this would see society and industry develop rapidly in the region, as the prosperous relationship with the large empire encouraged a steady influx of productive new people. This development would also see the rise of a common sense of identity within the population, and it is with this that Dao truly became a nation unto itself. The winds of history would soon change, however, and with the breaking apart of the Khan Empire in the 3300s, Dao would become increasingly insular as the connections it had formed were cut off due to conflict. Once the new major powers of the Central Plains, Shuzai, Hanbei, and Yuan, had established themselves as the dominant kingdoms of the new era, the attention of Hanbei specifically turned towards the small, mountainous nation on its northern border. Over the next centuries, Hanbei would make multiple military incursions into Dao, attempting to seize access to not just its resources, but also the artisanal metalworking industry that had grown alongside its mining efforts. Dao would not be an easy target, however, and though it would cause significant damage, Hanbei's war efforts would consistently result in strategic losses in the face of the motivated and resourceful defenders. It could be argued that the drain on morale and resources as a result of Dao's staunch defense would contribute to Hanbei's eventual downfall as a state. As it did not have the wealth or manpower to construct and maintain vast fortifications, Dao's defensive strategy instead had to rely on a standing army that could sortie against invaders when the time came. This force would become well known, both for its high standards of training and equipment, and for skilled commanders who could make the most of the strength available to them. This all came together with the aid of a comprehensive network of scouts, whose ability to give regular updates on the positions of approaching armies was crucial in allowing Dao's own to force engagements on favorable terms. In the centuries following the dissolution of the Khan Empire, gunpowder technology would come into its own, and the development of pike and shot tactics would change warfare in the Central Plains at large. It was in this environment that Hanbei's military evolved. However, such methods would prove far less effective in Dao's rugged landscape. Compounding this, although Hanbei would field a much larger force than Dao could ever hope to, its soldiers lacked the experience, high-quality equipment, and strict drilling of their opposition. Rough terrain also limited Hanbei's ability to use its cavalry, forcing them to rely mainly on foot soldiers. Leadership, as I mentioned before, was yet another area in which Dao had an edge. Though Dao also suffered from feuds among its elite, within Hanbei's ruling class, distrust was endemic, and the near-constant attempts to undermine and outperform rivals would consistently harm the cohesion and effectiveness of their formations. As a result of both its environment, society, and the nature of its main enemy, by the advent of the 3600s, Dao had grown its military into a professional and renowned fighting force. Optimized for foot combat on rough terrain, against numerically superior but individually inferior opposition. The Iron Demons of Tao embody the notion that innovation is born from necessity. Thanks for making it to the end. I hope you found this video interesting. I think I'll experiment with making some shorter videos next, but I'm excited to see what people think of this one, so let me know any questions or ideas in the comments. If you'd like to contribute to me continuing to make videos, you can support me via my Patreon, the link for which is in the description, along with the link to the Power Fantasy Discord. Thank you so much to those of you already supporting me there. It really is very much appreciated. I've also included links to the YouTube channels I mentioned at the start. They're excellent, especially if you have an interest in medieval European history. Thank you for watching. See you next time.